Okay, I'm going to call to order our public hearing on the proposed 2022-2023 budget. Welcome. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who are here, I am going to delay our Pledge of Allegiance until the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. Our emergency exits are the back corners of the library and the entrance of the library into the hallway there. And I believe we're ready to head right into the presentation.
All right. Good evening, everyone, both here and watching on the live stream. For tonight's presentation, we've done a number of presentations to the board and to the community to get us to this point. Tonight's takes a little different flavor because there are required elements. So you will hear us talk really as an extension of previous conversations about what the budget supports. Then Brian will take over and go through some of the required elements. But something that we feel is really important is the third component tonight, where we're going to take you through some very concrete and specific examples of what happens to tax rates, tax bills when there is an equalization change, especially a significant equalization change within a town or towns, which is the case for us this year. This will really emphasize the need to understand we control the tax levy. That is it. When we establish that, the towns essentially take over, as Brian will walk you through. By the time they're done, they give us data back. We run a formula that generates the tax rates that in turn is what the tax bills are based on. But as we go through this, it's important for board members to understand with all of these moving parts, we control the tax levy, which you're familiar with at this point. So let me go into the summary again, a variation on what you've seen before, and this really is intended to show you the logic model of what we have been working on over the last 4 years as a governance team to give every one of our students a true set of opportunities to achieve that meaningful diploma that we've defined at each such meeting over those years. First thing, the ongoing development and the implementation of a consistent curriculum across all 4 buildings. This is both academic and behavioral. This is the social-emotional curriculum that we have in place. Again, that consistency across 4 buildings, such that those students, when they go into the middle school, there's a very similar and shared experience. The next piece is that, and we've talked about this before with our multi-tiered system of supports. What happens then after that curriculum, those curricula are implemented, the instruction takes place, what happens when our students don't meet the expectations? We have to have a very specific and assessment-based way to intervene such that we can, as soon as possible and as effectively as possible, get students right back on track with their grade level expectations. Again, this is both in academic and behavioral sides of what we do. The kids can't get there if the obstacles are such that it prevents them from being able to learn and learn well. So many of the obstacles really come into play within students' mental health. And so over the course of the last number of years, we as a team have worked diligently to make sure that we have school counselors in place, school social workers in place, our school psychologists in place, school support staff in our primary project programs that we have in 2 of our buildings, for example. And again, the goal is to teach our children those self-management techniques, those executive function techniques, such that we minimize and mitigate those obstacles to our students' learning. And so having the mental health staff is so critical to us now more than ever. When we look at our students who qualify for special education, for example, they've gone through MTSS, and even with more and more structured interventions, we're finding that the students still are not able to achieve grade level expectations. That may require a referral to special education to do the additional testing and do the qualification metrics that we have to to see if they need those additional supports. We want to make sure that we have, as was recommended in our special education program review some years back, we want to make sure that we have maximized the continuum of services for our students so that we can be, just like with MTSS, be as specific as possible within the program options. Nancy, John Leo, and Julie will talk more about that later tonight. Looking at the middle school model, this is something that we as a team, as a governance team, identified early on, that we have a junior high model at Ballston Spa, largely as a remnant of the cuts that happened in 2008, 2009. We know that our middle school kids need that true middle school model, and so we identified and are in the process of implementing the middle years program, which is sponsored by the International Baccalaureate program. All of our kids will have access to the program, the civics, the curriculum that's attached to that. This is something that we are getting increasingly excited about. And then again, as we launch kids from that strong elementary base into this incredible set of programs and opportunities with middle years program in middle school, and then into high school to give them access to that growing body of pathways that we have that really, and the board is well familiar with this, that range from P-TECH in a very small setting over in the Malta campus, to our AP courses, to our Regents track courses, career and technical education for the students who need something a bit different, a little more structure, a little more support, Spa Academy, and the year coming up, we'll have the Spa Twilight Academy to give every one of our kids the program that best meets their needs and gets them moving forward towards that meaningful diploma. In addition to this, the music and arts are so important in the lives of our students, and my goodness, one only needs to attend one of our musicals or dramatic performances to see so many of these kids in a different light. That's what really is so much fun about this, that whether they're backstage or on stage, these kids have a different purpose and can demonstrate different proficiencies and different skill sets to us in these settings, in our clubs that are sponsored. And then finally, in the interscholastic sports program that we offer here for all 3 seasons. This is something that we are very proud of. I think so many of you know, each year we have those teams who continue to improve, and we're starting to see increasing sectional titles, looking at, remembering the state championships and the feelings that brings. These are critical, these co and extracurricular components of our program, these are critical to give our students really that full set of opportunities towards that meaningful diploma. This is really the heart of what this budget supports. Obviously, the ancillary components of it are day-to-day operational pieces, from transportation to facilities. All of that continues to be supported within this budget, and so now I'll ask Brian to take you through more of the technical and required aspects of it.
So this is the budget that everyone is familiar with. We've been talking about it since February. We finalized it a few weeks ago, and obviously this is the budget that everyone will be voting on May 17th. And I'm just going to go through, I know that the board members have been here, but this presentation is also for the public, and that's why it's a budget hearing. So we still need to go through each of the elements and talk about it as if we've never talked about it. So the first section of the budget is called general support, and all the areas that are encompassed in that are listed there. Starts with the Board of Education and works down through all of the various departments that you think of as senior management, for lack of a better term. But it also includes areas associated with all of our facilities, facilities operations, all of our central data management. That's a big deal right now. We'll talk about that a little bit in a second, but that's the thing where we're dealing with all the issues associated with everything that in the world and the country are dealing with, and that is IT security and cybersecurity. And then our say equipment, I'm really talking about HVAC systems, electrical, plumbing are all been updated and save us money. The one flyer in that one is, of course, is utilities, and we all know what's happening there. Luckily, the school district, we have futures contracts for our natural gas, which provides all of the heat and electricity, basically, well, 90% of it, for the high school and middle school. And so we're in good shape there. When we have to buy electricity directly, that gets a little tougher, but we're still in good shape because of the volume that we buy, and we can buy in bulk. So hopefully that won't get any worse, but we're prepared for it in regard to utility costs. District services, that is the other things I talked about earlier. Those are the attorneys and IT and insurance, all the other things that might be, kind of the administration or management that crosses over the entire district, not just associated with one building. And the big part that went up there is IT, as I mentioned there. It's like a big increase. It's almost half of the increase is associated with all the things we're doing with network security and servers and one-to-one devices for all the students that we've moved to. Okay, so then here's the heart of the budget. This is the instructional area. This is everything that you think of traditionally as a school district, starting with the building principals, which is referred to as building supervision, and going through all of the pieces of regular school that we all touch on. If you don't work in a school district, you don't see all that back office stuff. And it goes all the way down to athletics is included in there, all the co-curriculars, 4.1%. That's driven with by some of the new positions that are in there are in this area. And overall we had some quite a bit of retirements, so that helped out, and we're in good shape there. Considering what's going on in the market, 4.1% is good for that kind of very large grouping of employees. This is all staff practically. There are certainly instructional stuff, but it's all the staff that is included here. We'll just talk about regular education is the regular classrooms, whether it's at the elementary, whether it's art or math at the high school. That's up 4.8%. Again, that is driven mostly by some new positions that are in there, particularly at the middle school and some of the elementary. Special education is, as we all know, the special education for those kids with disabilities that need extra attention, and that's included there. 5.1%. There are new teachers in that also to handle, I think it is at the high school. Yep, for continuation as the kids get older and move through these years. Speaking of continuing ed is really our the adult ed program, other programs like the swim program, but it also includes the district is required to provide a program for the local county sheriff's office and the jail there. We have to provide a teacher there for certain students. It's gone down dramatically because we were contracting with BOCES, but we brought it back in-house. There's a much smaller number of kids now because of the change in bail reform, so we saw a significant decrease there. Computer-aided instruction is really stuff associated with the classrooms and library inventories, etc. And this is actually even out that I think there was retirement in there. That really doesn't have anything to do with all the equipment and all the other stuff that we buy. It's up in the other category that I said is up so much. So this is simply a result of a retirement that probably a tech teacher and it's just there. Nursing, standard stuff. You understand the nurse's office. I believe there's a new nurse in there for next year. And athletics, a few new positions, but not a lot. We have to be careful here. This was a very hard category to budget for because we haven't had a full athletic program for 2 years. So we're really going back to the 2019 school year to use any kind of historical data. And a big part of that is all of the referees that are all the games and the umpires. So we know what their contract is, but we don't know how many are going to be necessarily at every game, and at the end of the season, how many lengthy seasons where people who make the playoffs are. You have to be able to adjust for that, and we have to pay for those too. So if you have a good season, it actually costs you more. And if you, I don't say what I think about that. But,
You're thrilled, Brian.
So all that's included in there for athletics.
He's thrilled.
Okay, transportation. Operations are the buses and the drivers, and that's the fuel and repair the buses and the maintenance of the buses. Everything is in there, 3.8%. The bus garage, that's literally the maintenance of the building itself, the garage. And that includes things like, there's a bus wash is there, all of the lifts, those all are on maintenance agreements. We have to be very careful and have to stay very safe with our lifts. As you can imagine, you're lifting those buses up, 10 feet in the air in some instances. The center shaft of those lifts is about 2 feet wide, and it's amazing to see them up on those things. But that's all included in there, and there's a little bit of a decrease. So doing good there. Again, the building is in good shape. We had some rush issues. The exterior of the building is metal, and we fixed that. And other than that, the HVAC, electrical, all that stuff is in great shape. And then finally, contracted spend. That is our contracts that we contract out to third-party contractors to deliver kids to various locations across the capital region and as far away as Cooperstown and other places where special education students would have to go. Usually this is 1 or 2 students in a small vehicle going a long ways, and so we contract that out. Hopefully that'll hold, and we will have a small decrease there. That is a real guesstimate, because we never know. They're not even finished with the IEP review to know where kids will be placed yet. Yeah, we have to have a number in April. And benefits. So this is pretty self-explanatory. The retirement systems are the New York State employee retirement system for everyone who is not a certified teacher or administrator. And then TRS is, in fact, the teacher's retirement system for everyone who is certified by the State Education Department. Also included in there is Social Security, because the Social Security FICA is in there as a retirement. Medical insurance, health and dental, up 4.8%. As I mentioned when we first presented this, it's a good number. It's actually a great number because it also includes the health insurance for new staff that we have included. In the future, we expect this to start to climb again because we think health insurance is going to climb, not just for us, but across the nation as we get back to normal and people start going back and doing their standard services that they have put off for a long time. While there is the small things related to workers' comp, unemployment, like disability, the big one there is workers' comp is 2/3 of that. We're self-insured, but we still have to pay. That means we have to pay the claims that come up, and we also have to pay for a third-party administrator for that, and we still have to pay the New York State a small amount, about $30,000 a year, for being self-insured and how they administer that. So that's that.
Excuse me, Brian. The retirement, do we get the actual numbers and percentages before we put together our budget, or is this a projection?
It's totally a projection. All right.
And when do we get the actual numbers?
Soon. I mean, they put out a number, and they usually stick to it. So, for example, TRS said that the number for next year will be 10.29%. Okay, and they originally had given a range of 10.25 to 10.5 to help you start budgeting. But ultimately, even then, you don't know during the year who's staying, who's going, and every time you have a board meeting and there's 2 dozen appointments in there, that changes that number. Because either someone is leaving, someone's going, they're either coming in lower, coming in higher. It's a constant change. ERS is the same way. And also what plays into that is retirement, and particularly in ERS because there's multiple tiers. All right, and the tiers have a different rate, unlike TRS. So in ERS, all new employees are coming in at tier 6, but you still have employees who are tier 1, tier 2 that go back 30 years. Very few of them now, as they go away, they're actually more expensive than new employees because there's less benefits in the newer retirement tiers, so they're cheaper. So there's all that to play through.
Thank you.
Debt service, and this is the thing that's undistributed, which is basically it's undistributed against the rest of the budget. The bands are the annual payment on the buses that we do for our replacement schedule. That's up a small amount. The interfund transfers is a mixture of a group of things. I know that $4.5 million is for debt service, and that's for our bonds. That's our long-term debt for all the work that's been done here for the last 15, 18 years is on there. As I mentioned in the past, last year or 2 years ago, this high school came off of there, and that's done. We do have
Brian, just a point on this. One of the things that makes it very difficult to compare district to district, why is District A asking for a 2.5% increase while District B, that is similar in size, is at 0%? This tends to be one of the areas. When you have a lot of debt falling off on any given budget year, that's something that can be beneficial to you. And so we do have districts within the region, within the Suburban Council, where this is the case. But again, it just complicates that comparison between the two.
Depends on when their capital projects are.
That's
So
right.
capital projects might be staggered between districts, and so the money coming in or coming off will be staggered.
Yeah, it's all based
against
on
different-
that local district's planning.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's usually an easier budget year when you have some significant debt service coming off. On the flip side, you do lose the building aid that's funding it, but you're only getting, in our case, 75%, so you're gaining a quarter against the net, and you're gaining the gross of the actual expense in your budget itself. Okay, so, and then at the bottom, I note that included in that is funding for the middle school orchestra room. There's something called a capital outlay projects. We're allowed to include those in those interfund transfers, and we need to improve the AC in the orchestra room. It's not only just for the students and the staff, but it is for the instruments. So in the winter, we have to put in a humidifier to try and keep the humidity at the right level. And in the summer, it gets too humid, and we need to dry out, and that's part of the air conditioning to keep it dry. Because if anybody has any woodwind folks in their house, you know that problem. Okay, so moving on. So there again, we covered all the sections, and I just wanted to put that up there one more time to show the figure. So let's move on to the other side of the budget, the revenues. So here are the total revenues broken down by property taxes. There's the 2.5% increase. The pilot payment is budgeted to go down $512,000. Now, actually, the amount for global was budgeted to go down $540,000, but we are getting some other pilots that offset that a little bit. But when I get to the portion, when I start to talk about tax rates, you're going to see a significant decrease in the town of Malta's tax rate because of the way that things worked out this year. That means that global pilot payment is going to be going down more. In fact, it will go down about $900,000. So we have not even voted the budget. We haven't started the fiscal year, and we are now $360,000 in the red on that global founding plan. It's a problem. It's a problem every year. We talk about it. That's why we talk about it so much, because of the impact it has on us. But we're stuck with what we have, and we're going to work it out, and that's what we deal with, and that's my job, to make sure that we can handle those kind of changes. State aid, large increase. So that has to do with foundation aid. The formula is finally running again after over a decade of frozen or near frozen. We've got 1%, 2%. Basically, we were losing, how many, Ken, was it $4 million?
Yep, exactly
$4 million a year from the state because they were not running that formula under Governor Cuomo. That's every year. All right. And it was tough. It's been difficult. So now they're finally allowing the formula to run, and it's correcting, all the situations. So there's a lot of districts that got a minimum increase, and there's a few of us like us who were losing because the formula wasn't running, and now we're getting that back. It's going to take 3 years. So next year we'll get a good increase too, if they have the budget and if they're able to afford it at the state level. Tuitions, federal aid, that's down a little bit because we expect fewer kids to come into the district to pay tuition for our special education program. That just has to do with who's coming in and who's in the area. It goes up and down every year. Miscellaneous is lots of various things from interest earnings to facilities rental to other transfers amongst funds. That's involved in there, and that's going to go down a bit. A lot of that has to do with interest earnings are budgeted to go down. Maybe that'll help with on the flip side of the higher interest rates and the inflation costs associated with our utilities. You might see a little more interest earnings on our deposits because rates are going up. And then finally, fund balance is adjusted just down 25,000, so it's 1.2 million, and so the totals match up with your expenditure side. So let's talk about the tax cap. So we're all familiar with the tax cap, and So that's the change, and then it just is applied the rate that's associated with the town of Malta, as I just mentioned, so that rate's gonna go down, so we'll lose a bit there. And finally, this will come out of the wash here in 2028, and it'll walk. And in fact, it'll start to go up as long as the Malta rate goes up. It will go up. If the Malta rate goes down, it'll go down. But the leveling is much better than, you can see the large $43 million decrease. Now there's the news. Everybody's watching the news. I hope that saw that they've announced that they are planning on an addition to the plant. And we've looked at that. You don't have all the details. We don't have the timing. But if it happens within the next 3 years, that could be really good news because that could offset this period right here where we get offsetting revenue, and this could just level out. We'll have to see how it plays out. There's a complex formula for how it's done. It's based on the type of building that's built. So we get the most amount of money if it's a production facility where they're building the chips themselves. We get a lesser amount if it's technology development type of area, which is experimental, and we get even a lesser amount if it's an administrative type building. So there's all these formulas. Until that's all designated by the town of Malta's assessor, and we know all that, it's very hard to have a record. So finally, state aid. This is the breakdown of state aid. I mentioned the foundation aid formula that's finally running for us and catching us up for over a decade. FOCIS is up a small amount. Excess cost aid is for special education students that have a particularly high cost. We're able to get additional funds for that, and that's up a bit. Categorical aid is that aid that is a one-to-one dollar aid for certain expenditures. It involves some software, some computer hardware, some library supplies, and some textbooks. It's a small amount relative to what the school district spend, but it is there, and we'll take it happily. Transportation is up a bit. That's associated with the increase in cost of transportation. The aid goes up simultaneously. And then building aid. So that's going up quite a bit. That has to do with the project that's out there now. And what's changing is we're going to be, as I mentioned at the meeting we talked about this, is the main part of all that project from 2018, the $24 million is going to be completed hopefully this summer. If it's on time and all the reports can be put in before next June, then, not this June, the following June, then we'll see that additional aid, and that'll come in and they'll start the building aid for us. So that's good news. But we want to make sure that that project is on time, and right now it's on time ahead of schedule. And no issues. I've shown this slide before. It shows the percentage of state aid as total revenue, and we can see that back in FY09 it was over 40%, and it was up there. If you go back, it was right in this range. And then there was the participants drop here in this period when there was the real estate crunch. The state didn't have any money, so it dropped down, and then it's been slowly kind of doing, and then it's popping up. This right here is a result of running the formula. So that's good news, and it should continue to go up, 1-2% each year for at least one more year. This is the percentage of revenues that come from source. So taxes pays 57%, state aid 34%, fund balance 1%, and all other from that other chart. If you add it all up, you get that figure. Okay, so let's talk about tax rates. So these are the projected tax rates for this time. As I'm about to show you, it is strictly a projection based on the initial numbers, the preliminary numbers that we get from the town. The school board sets the levy, and we'll talk about that, and then all this comes from that. Now you're going to see some strange things here. You're going to say Malta's 2, or Milton's 2.4, Malta's minus 8% almost, Ballston's up, and Charlton, which we have 12% told by assessors that, and by real estate folks, that we're seeing 10 to 15% a year increase in the value of houses, and that's being reflected in these numbers that they have to get through the state. So the towns submit their data for sampling of the data for their town that they're in, different sales, market sales, et cetera, actual sales, and then they come up with this with the state sets the equalization. So what does this mean? So just taking Milton for a minute, that meant that last year, if your house was assessed at $200,000, that was only 85% of what its real market value was. That's what that means. Okay? So now what it's saying in this year, because prices have gone up, the assessor and the state of New York is saying, well, your $200,000 house is only really assessed at 76.5% of what it's worth. If you divide that number into your 200,000, you get what the assessment is. I'm going to show you some of those examples. Okay? So minus 10% in that rate is kind of indicative of a 10% increase in values. All right? And by the way, I just want to point out, I did leave, understanding the equalization rate on everybody's table. This comes from the state of New York, and you can take a look at that, and there was some at the back there for the public to take a look at, and have it too, because we knew we were going to go into this conversation because of the big changes this year. In a year when there's little change here, the equalization rates changes don't really matter much. All right, the rates are almost the same in every town. When there's big changes, 10% changes, now you're going to see a big change. Now Malta, how does Malta? Malta's at 100%. So what that says is that if a house is worth $300,000 in the town of Malta, then the market value for that house is $300,000. Now I don't know if this is true or not, but that's what is.
It's a full assessment.
It's a full assessment.
And
It's
if you
100%.
live in the town of Malta, you just got a letter that said, here's your new assessment, and they went up.
So what the town of Malta does is it tries to stay at a 1% or 100% assessment every year. So it goes around and it reassesses everybody's houses or samples of the houses, right? And then it applies percentages across so that they can say to the state of New York, the percentage of our assessment is in fact at 100% of market value. Okay? Now none of this is exact science, and I'm not an assessor and I'm not an expert on this, but I can simply explain that part of it. And then there's 4-page documents like this that talk about what the assessors have to do. So I do have to say that all the different school districts that I've worked at, the assessment offices in the towns that we cover are really well run. They do a good job. There are difficulties, and if you want to do a reassessment like the town of Malta does every year, that costs money. All right, because they have to hire somebody to come in and they've got to spend days and weeks going around and looking at market values and literally looking at houses. The other towns chose about 15, 16 years ago, maybe 17, 18, chose to stop doing that. The year before I got here in 2005, all of the equalization rates for all the towns was 1. But since that time, they've decided, the other towns said, look, we're not going to spend the money to do that. We'll just adjust the equalization rate every year with New York State, and we'll go from there. Okay? Now I know I'm getting some weird looks, like what? But I'm going to try to make this clear. This was Ken's idea. I've tried to do this at different school districts. It's a difficult haul. All right, so let's try and do some examples here. So there's 2 pieces. All right. The first part of the formula for taxes is how the levy, which is what the school board sets, how that gets distributed across each of the towns. And then once it's distributed to each of the towns, it gets distributed to each house on the second half of the formula. Okay? So let's look at the first half. What this is saying is and these are just numbers that I came up with. There's 4 towns. Here's the total assessed value. I made it equal to $3 billion. Okay? Here's some assessment rates, all right, or equalization rates, excuse me. All right, similar to what we have. All right. So what you do is you divide that number into there and you get this, and that's the full value. Full value is supposed to be another name for that is market value. It's an estimate. Okay? So there's the figure. So now each one of these numbers divided by the total gives you the percentage. So in this says that town 1, its full value of the full school district is 36% of apply that to that, and there's their share. Everybody got that? Pretty straightforward. All right? So, but then it starts to go crazy. So now, okay, that's all well, but then what happens if the equalization rate changes, which is what we're seeing? So in red are the changes. Okay? So I have those go down. Look, the changes change here, the apportionment changes. Now what each town has to pay has changed. And in this example, and it's only an example, the town one has to pay $500,000 more of the total will be distributed to all the taxpayers in the town than it did under the old numbers. This town pays less. This is about the same, this is about the same. When you add it all up, it comes to zero because the school district does not get one dime more than the total. It just gets switched around between towns. Okay?
So
if
that,
you add
that
those
bears
two, it's zero.
repeating what Brian just said. Once we set the levy, that's it. It's in, and as I suggested to you in an earlier update this week, there are times where the board can change the levy in August. It's very, very rare. But once you set that levy, everything in these formulas rotates around that number. That stays constant.
Okay, so this isn't a complete picture though, all right? Because what's missing here is actual changes in assessment and new construction, okay? So we've talked about that many times, new construction in particular, but so for example, though, with Malta, there's clearly a large increase in assessed value because they had to stay at 100%. So you can't just use this or it misrepresents what's there. So you go to the next one. And so what I'm showing here is that the reduced rates that we used in the second graph and the apportionment, okay? Now, let's change the total taxable value. This changes every year by millions, okay? Tens of millions. So let's say that this one went up 2%, this one went up 4%, and this one went up 3%, all right? And then 4, should I have that in red? You apply that, you get this new number, and then you divide this into this. Now you get a new full value, which again is different. You get a new percentage for each town, and you get a new share. Look, it's reversed it now again. Now this town pays less, this town pays more. Before it was flipped. Seems crazy, I know, but it's the way it works. And what it's trying to do with the state, and I assume that this formula comes from the 1930s or 40s. I mean, it hasn't changed in maybe 100 years. I don't know. But the formula has always been, and what it's trying to do is first take into account the full value so that every town is giving its share based on market value, not some other number that someone could manipulate. So they're trying to adjust it to make it even. So that's what it's for. And then this just simply is, generally it's the increases in towns that don't reassess, it's the increases in new construction. And in towns that do reassessment, in the case of Malta, and sometimes little bits in the other town, it'll be a lot because it's new construction and all the other stuff that goes on. It changes to people's current houses. So, again, this is a very different share than it was a minute ago when it was an original dollar change. All these numbers change every year. Okay, so now we've gotten our apportionment, and each town has the amount of money that it's got to now let's talk about new construction. We've talked about how we can say that if the levy's going up and we know new construction across the district is 1.5%, we know that the average tax rate increase, average, is 1% because you can subtract those numbers. Well, you know, you can listen to me and believe me or not, but let's just do the math, okay? So here it is again. Here's our base year with those same houses, okay? We don't do any increases. I got to hold all the variables, you know, constant here. No increase, but wait a minute, there's some new construction, all right? It's a small number because we're using small numbers here, but these would be new houses, new condos, whatever. 1.5% of this is this, and you get to here, all right? Now, rerun the formula with this addition in here. The rate is now 16,487. It's higher, all right? But you know, not as high as that, because you know the rate can go down as much as the other because there's no change here. But look at the net, 1%. Okay, so it's a $44 change here. You divide $44 by this, you're going to get 1%. So that's when we talk about every year. We say, well, okay, the levy's 2%, and we got 2%. And you know, a few years ago, we had 2% levies and 2% in growth, and you saw taxes go down. Literally, I mean, people would actually see a decrease in their bill and not just the rate, and that's why, okay? It won't happen this year, it won't happen so clearly this year because there's just too many other things changing. Now, it's important, so let's keep going. I think everybody's comfortable with that. I just want to say again, the district sets the amount of the levy, and that's it. And then we get the numbers from the state and the town. The state gives us the EQ rate off of the state website. Towns give you the assessed value, preliminary right now. That'll change too. And we get back to these rates. Okay. So what this means is if you live in the town of Milton and your assessment didn't change, which is most likely that it did, all right, but you could have. If you build a garage, if you did something, you moved, your assessment's different. If it doesn't change, then your taxes are going to go up 2.4%. And that's because of what happened with those equalization rates. Okay? Same thing in the town of Ballston. If there's no change in your assessment, your taxes will go up 3.1%. That's higher than what we said, but wait a minute. This right here, all right, in Malta it's going to go down. It is not going to go down. Your taxes are not going down 7.9%. Why? Because your assessment went up probably 8-9%. You see how that works? So that wipes that out. But they will probably see either a zero change or a slight decrease for the single-family home. We talked about that single-family home price. Malta's the biggest town in the district. All right? When you weight all this, and when we say the average single-family house will see $68, that's why. These will see more, these will see less. The average across our towns will be that number. Katie, you like this?
I absolutely loved every minute of that. I just wish I would have brought my calculator to check your figures.
So it's difficult, and it's upsetting to some people, you know, that this is going to happen. Now, one thing that someone in Malta could say right now, well, the reason why the town of Ballston is going up 3.1 is because they weren't really assessed as high as they should have been, and their equalization went down faster than because it needed to be leveled and adjusted for the true market value. That means they were underpaid in prior years. I've heard that argument. And to a sense, it could be, probably not, but it would be if it didn't get adjusted in this one, they would be underpaid. So here it is, the state trying to, you know, with this formula, when you have a school district across multiple entities, that's what's trying to take care of that.
Brian, isn't that's the town's choice to make the assessment every year?
Yeah, but the town, that's okay because their equalization rate will go down. And if it had gone down less, let's say 8% instead of 10 in Ballston, that number might have been close to 1 or 2 or 0. It's hard. I'll give you an example. What can happen is some of your sample sales that they have within the town. So how do you get the market value? You got to go look at all the houses and commercial properties. Don't forget those that sold during the last year. So if you get some property that for whatever reason sells at a very high market is moving so quickly, and they're only making this change once a year. Okay? It's just, they get one shot at it, and then all crazy stuff that goes on. Heck, if the stock market crashes and and the price of houses goes down in November, well, that'll come around, and maybe we'll get picked up by March 1st. And that's, by the way, that's the date on this. So they start that process. And again, I think it's important to understand, they get one chance at it, they get one shot at it every May, and then they finalize it for July, and they don't really have a choice in that. Okay?
This is where, as you're talking to your own constituents that you represent, my recommendation, don't try to explain this to them. Have them call Brian. He's been doing this, we're on probably week 3 or 4 now, where he's spending a lot of time on the phone, walking people through this and understanding that because your assessment went up by 10% does not mean, in his example, that your taxes are actually going up 10%. He goes through all of this in very short form with so many of these individuals, and I think you've got a pretty good success rate going right now.
Yeah, I've talked to, many people, again, it's the town of Malta, because they're all concerned about that somehow the levy rate increase is gonna go on top of their change, and it's simply not. You can see, I mean, look at Malta, it's $1.31 per thousand that it's going down. And so, I know, for example, I was talking to a real estate agent, and she has multiple houses as one concern. One of the houses was only, the assessment only increased, I think, 3.5%. I said, I bet you you're gonna, I said this a few weeks ago, I bet you you're gonna actually have a tax decrease. Because she's below the average for the entire town. Because the entire town is somewhere around 8 to 10%. If you're below the average, you'll be in the negative. And so she understood it, she was a math person, and she understood it, and she said, oh, I said, the rate's not staying the same, the rate's going down. Again, this is kind of a crazy year. Other years, we'll see very similar changes. It'll almost be the same, but not this time. And anytime you have large increases in property values related to market factors, this is what happens. Okay, I think that's it, right? Yes. So, any questions? Board? How about the audience? Does the audience have any questions? Okay, I think I know I ran over, and I apologize.
No, that's...
It's okay, and I think I'd just kind of like to summarize for our audience streaming. The district wants to maintain the programs that we have for our students. We want to be a good environment and be a good employer to all the people that we employ. We want to be able to have our facilities and our services available to the community as well. Every year we have contractual increases. There are increases related to inflation. There are increases in things like health insurance and other insurance costs, etc. The district tries to balance those with where we can find savings, where we may have changes in retirements and new hires, and also see where can we possibly have some expansion ultimately to benefit our students. I've been keeping track of this for the last 10 years easily, and one of the things that I'm struck by is that in Ballston Spa, the percentage increases from year to year are always relatively constant. If you look in the newspapers, you see the districts where everyone's up in arms because all of a sudden their tax levy increase was 10%. Their tax levy increase was 12%. They had a big year, they got themselves in trouble one way or another, and that doesn't happen here in Ballston Spa. We try and offer the best value we can. As Brian went on to explain to us, there's a lot of factors related to town actions, related to the marketplace, related to assessments of people's houses. We don't have any control over that. So that's what I'd like people to remember and to leave with.
And what we gave you, and certainly to the audience as well, we gave you a lot tonight. And so you may walk away with your head spinning a little bit, but if then you have additional questions, on our website, on the financial information page, this presentation will be there. probably one of the documents that we are most proud of, that Brian just does a remarkable job with. It's our budget statement. We call it the budget handbook. It looks very voluminous, very thick. If you can focus on the first 21 pages, that gives you the level of detail that you typically won't see us provide in these presentations. There is a great deal of information on there. Please take a look. Call us if you have specific questions on these things, but again, all of that is but 2 clicks away on our website.
And all our district residents should be receiving this budget edition of the Reader. And do
This
we know
week.
when this is going to be mailed?
This week.
All right,
It
it's
should
going to be
in
mailed.
mailboxes this week.
Should be in your mailboxes this week. Here again is a higher level summary. Brian, I'm sorry there wasn't room in here for all your discussion about equalization rates, but here is the higher level summary for you as well.
I know that here on the Reader, it says that, this is a 7-month process, October through the vote in May. But truly, Brian and his team does this year round, and they thousands of hours is what they put into this. And every year they try to, as Jason says, they're trying to balance everything that we have going on in the school to make sure that the kids have everything that they need, curriculum, that they get a well-rounded education. And it's definitely a balancing act to make sure that everything is good. Brian's is the 7 years I've been on the board, and his team have done a phenomenal job. So thanks again for everything that you do, your team does, and keeping us, and the amount of explanation that you give to everyone. So if anyone has any questions, please give me a call.
Thank you very much for that, Dottie. Okay, so I am going to adjourn our public hearing on the proposed 2022-2023 budget at this time. I will hit that to make it official. And I will call to order now our regular meeting of the Ballston Spa Central School District Board of Education for the date of May 4th, 2022. Will everyone please rise, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I'd like to welcome everyone who is here in person, welcome those who are watching the live stream. I want to point out our emergency exits are in the back corners to the outside, and then the doorway into the hallway at the front of the library. And I just want to take a moment to say a few remarks. So this week, May 2nd through 8th, is our National Teacher Appreciation Week. Since 1984, the National PTA has designated 1 week in May as the Teacher Appreciation Week, special time to honor those who lend their passion and skills to educating our children. National Nurses Week also begins this year on Friday the 6th. It begins each year on May 6th and ends on May 12th, Florence Nightingale's birthday. I learned something when I found that out. These permanent dates enhance planning, position the National Nurses Week as an established recognition event. The theme for this year for National Nurses Week is Rooted in Strength. On behalf of the board, I want to extend gratitude and appreciation for all the hard work both of these groups do in support of our students. And I also want to just mention that this month is Mental Health Awareness Month. I'd also like to state that regarding the superintendent's resignation last Thursday, we were all surprised and saddened that he is leaving. All of us can certainly understand his desire to seize upon an excellent professional opportunity when it presented itself, and when the time comes, we will certainly wish Ken well as he leaves us. That said, there's still a lot of work to be done in the coming months. Ken has communicated his intent to finish strong on the work that is in process. And he's also going to share his experience and expertise on the superintendent transition. I want to emphasize that our district has a very strong leadership team in place, an incredibly dedicated, talented, and professional instructional staff, and a very hardworking and caring support staff. They, along with our community, are who make Ballston Spa a district of choice. Achievement of our goals and strategic plans will continue to be a focus and a priority as we work through the transition, and we're going to strive to have as much continuity and stability as possible for the starting of the school year in the fall of 2022 and beyond. The two most important functions of a school board are the oversight of the development and finalizing of a budget each year, and when needed, the hiring of the superintendent. The board delegates the responsibility for all district operations to the superintendent. As such, we need to be sure that we have excellence in that position. The Board of Education will be developing the process and the timeline for Mr. Suntz's replacement. This process will include multiple stakeholder groups' input and consistent communication about progress and next steps. We will not make a hiring mistake due to haste, nor will we waste time in the process. We need to hire the correct person for our district's particular needs, and that is what our board will do. We're at the time in our agenda for recognition. Superintendent Slentz.
Three areas. First, a segue off of what Jason suggested. To all of our teachers, to all of our community members who are in the teaching profession, and as I suggested to the team this week, to the teachers that we all had that inspired us to become educators and to follow the path of education. This week is so much more than plaques and goodies and Twitter posts and whatnot. As I said in my message to the team, teachers are economic engines. Right? They are social engineers. There are so many understated roles that they play. When we think back, as I related to them, it was just some days ago, I got a message on Facebook from one of my former students who said I was asked to remember a fond memory about fifth grade in particular, and I taught fifth grade for a number of years, and she recounted to me what she remembered. I never in 100 years would have thought that that's something that would have stuck with our kids. And yet every day we create these moments as teachers, we create these opportunities, had them created for us, which is why so many of us are sitting in this room. So yes, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, but my goodness, I hope that everyone will just take a little bit of time, whether it's on social media, phone calls, something, reach out to a teacher, especially this year. In the year that we thought, okay, things are going to get back to normal, we made it through last year, all is well. That has just not been true. We all make the argument, and it's an easy one, that this has been the most difficult year of pandemic closure, and it sits in each classroom. When it's managing COVID, and we know now it's not just managing COVID, it's all of the environmental factors, the civic factors that are playing into this. The politicization of education today. Teachers are not only dealing with COVID, they're dealing with wondering if what they're about to say is going to land them on a social media page and have outcry on something that they are stating because it is within the best interest of our children. Please reach out, empathize with our teachers, thank them for what they do every day, not just because of what they deal with multiple changes in education as it is, but every other factor that they have been managing. It is not the profession that so many of us entered 10, 20, 30 years ago, but it is what our kids need desperately right now more than ever. Teachers need that shot of energy just to reach out and say thank you, or just to reach out and say, remember when you told me this, and I believed you, and this is why I am where I am today. So please take some time to do that. I would appreciate it, and I know the teachers certainly will. Second, I had related to the board a meeting or two ago Speaking of the context in which we're operating this year, our transportation department, we have 6 full-time mechanics. This year they have not been full-time mechanics. More often than not, they're full-time bus drivers because it is all hands on deck. Nonetheless, as I mentioned before, but we got the official state notice on this, the mechanics achieved a 98.43% approval rating on their DOT assessments this year. Those are very detailed assessments from the inspectors. Depending on the day, you would be amazed at the things that they pick up that might be wrong with one of our buses. They have a very high bar to achieve because the children that are on those buses depend on the driver and the safety of the bus. 98.43%, just remarkable what they've done. And then finally, to our buildings and grounds staff, both very small teams. The board is aware that we are down, Brian, I think we're still down 6 cleaners right now. Yet when I walked back through the buildings on the Monday after vacation, this is an odd analogy when people say you could eat off the floor, because I'm not sure how many people actually practice eating off the floor. It's a strange thing. But if one were to choose to want to eat off the floors, you could have done it in our buildings. You walked through and it felt like opening day on September again. Just remarkable what this team did in a very short amount of time, understaffed all the while. And then you look at our fields. Again, a small team and the acres and acres of fields we have. We just added a whole bunch more acreage up on the hill here, and you look at the condition of those fields. That is so important in spring, where you could be playing 3, 4, 5 days in a row, and so the fields are really being beat up. We have a very small grounds crew, but my goodness, very similar to the facility staff, the work they have done in really protecting the investment that the community has made in our fields. Kudos to all of those folks as well. And that is it, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. We're now at the time in our agenda for the first session of public comment. Thank you. We do have 3 speakers signed up for their first public comment period. I just will summarize again our guidance on public comment. The Board of Education welcomes our district residents, parents, and other interested people to its meeting. Community involvement, public comment is encouraged so the board can better understand and represent the views of its constituents. Just a reminder that you should address comments to the board as a whole and not any particular individual. Information such as an individual student or particular personnel issues or any kind of slanderous or disparaging remarks about any particular person is not to be allowed. We'll ask you to come to the podium, and when recognized by the president, state your name and residence. Our statements are restricted to a maximum of 2 minutes. I will give you a heads up when we're close. I ask you just to please finish your remarks, and we certainly take your comment very seriously. So, first on our list is Holly Barker Flynn.
Thank you. Good evening. Holly Barker Flynn, Malta resident. I'm here as the chair of the Ballston Spa Education Foundation. For those of you who don't know, we provide grants to teachers in the district who have innovative classroom ideas, and we fundraise in order to provide those grants. Typically, when I'm here, I'm providing money to the school, so I apologize. We are not there yet. We will be voting this next week on the grants that we did receive for this spring cycles. So hope to be back in June with a donation. But just want to ask some questions because we have enjoyed the free sharing of information regarding the priorities of the districts and the goals in order for us to best serve the district. And so I appreciate the information about the upcoming search, but those were really my questions that I have. And just wanted to know what we're going to do to recruit the next superintendent. Will there be a search firm that is hired to get us that excellence that we deserve? What level of community involvement will there be in the process of selecting the next superintendent? Will any of the Ballston Spa Education Foundation or any of the PTAs have the opportunity to be involved, as well as community members and parents and teachers and students, not just the administration? So that's my question. And also, I'm wondering how the community will be kept informed throughout the process. So thank you very much for your time. And just a simple plug for the community members to get involved. There are plenty of organizations where you can lend your time, including the PTA and the Ballston Spa Education Foundation. We are always looking for members. I was also on the BARC board, and it was really a wonderful experience and a great way to give back. So please join your local community involvement.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Jason Severia.
Good evening. My name is Jason Severi, and I live down the road at Route 67. Previously, I've attended Board of Education meetings with the sole purpose of voicing my concerns within the district. Every single time I've spoken, the topics were negative in nature. I didn't plan on coming tonight, much less speaking. It dawned on me a few hours ago that me coming to speak to the board and to the parents and students watching at home and those in attendance, that these platforms can also be used for positive thoughts or ideas. I decided it was my duty as a taxpayer and member of this community to use tonight for such a purpose. I want to inform the board that I had a personal meeting today with Dr. Duca and Mrs. Breyer at the high school. I raised concerns for the graphic content in the book named Genderqueer at the last board meeting, and the result was this meeting with Dr. Duca and Mrs. Breyer. The meeting lasted about 1 hour. I brought with me a complete and personal synopsis of the book, copies of written law, and the actual physical book. I want to take this time to publicly thank Mrs. Breyer and Dr. Duca, thank you, for joining me in that meeting. As stated in the school policy, they had to offer me this meeting. That was not their choice. It was their choice, however, to treat me with respect, dignity, and be compassionate towards my concerns as a father of three teenage kids. I was never interrupted by either individual during my moments of speaking. Not once. Dr. Duca took the initiative to follow along, utilizing the actual book as I quoted material from many pages. I thank you, sir, for doing that. Mrs. Breyer listened with an open mind and open ears and politely challenged me when she felt a challenge was necessary. Mrs. Breyer, if she's watching, I thank you for that. There were times that I felt uncomfortable. There were times that I felt emotional, especially thinking of our kids, not just my own, and what we've dangerously grown comfortable with subjecting them to at such a young age. Those moments didn't last very long, and I'd like to think that Mrs. Breyer and Dr. Duca were inadvertently allowing me to borrow some of their strength and comfort, because in those moments I quickly recovered. I was informed that a committee would be formed to determine the outcome, whether this book will remain on the shelves of this library for students to view and read, or whether the book would be deemed as inappropriate for children to view and read and be pulled from the district. Of course, it is my hope, as it is many of the parents of this district, that it will be pulled from the library. Regardless, I am proud that a committee will decide the outcome. That is democracy in its own way. Individuals coming together and having a conversation to complete a task. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up, Steve Galish.
Good job. Spelling the same my name right from grade.
Thank you for allowing me to take this opportunity to address you. My name is Steve Galish, and I live in the town of Milton. Yesterday and today, I had the opportunity to listen to Meet the Candidate Night for those individuals running for the position of the school board here in Ballston Spa. Some cases I listened once and twice. I'm old, so I need to do that. I was concerned that 3 of the 5 candidates praised the so-called DEI social, emotional, inclusive practices that are sweeping across schools of this state as well as our country. DEI is eerily similar to the critical race theory, BLM, Common Core, and the like. These programs promise unity, serenity, harmony, when in fact, more often than not, the real outcome is violence, hatred, and divisiveness. Mark this conversation down in your memory, and write it down if you have to. DEI is not a panacea. Rather, DEI is a launch pad for transgender, gender reassignment, homosexuality, pedophilia, and what other evils people can think of. They scar, they damage, and they wound, and they sometimes much worse. There are cases throughout this country where puberty blockers are being given to children without the parents' consent, as well as chemical castrations. These things cannot be reversed. That person will live with that decision for the rest of that person's life. I can only imagine what that would be like. But even this progression is even further evidenced by the pornographic material discovered last month in this very school, in fact, this very room. Our children are being groomed, and DEI is the comb to do just that. The skill sets of the social, emotional inclusiveness must be taught first and foremost at home, while the same skills must be practiced by example as opposed to being taught to our children by our educators. This state in our school, this school, must be repeatedly reminded that our children are not only entrusted to you as educators, they are not your property of this school or anyone in this school. It is not your right or responsibility or imagined duty to teach our children information or habits or social beliefs that are contrary to those beliefs that are being taught and practiced at home. That is the sole responsibility of the parents or the guardians of these precious souls. In a few months, we will have a new school board and certainly a new school superintendent. It is my hope and fervent prayer that we can restore sensibility, decency, and morality to our educational process, and once again, just like it indicates in our mission in Ballston Spa School District, which is to teach critical teaching or thinking skills, not sexual skills, to our children, and to graduate thinking young adults to accept learning as a lifetime process, who strive for excellence in all their endeavors, and who live productively in their changing global and technical society. Thank you very much for listening.
Next, our student government report. You did not receive any text about the student government report. They're not present. So we'll have approval of minutes. I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 6th, 2022 regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any amendments or additions? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes of April 6th are approved. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 13th, 2022 regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any amendments or additions? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes for April 13th are approved. I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 26th, 2022 special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any amendments or additions? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes of the April 26th special meeting are approved. Next up, we have the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Jason. First, apologies to the board. We will have to roll the special education update to the next meeting. Mrs. Lashway, unfortunately, has been taken ill and had to leave. But the presentation is in your folder for your review. Certainly let us know if you have any questions between now and the next meeting. COVID management update. We've sent a few things out to the community on this. Just a reminder that we are once again categorized as a high risk for community transmission county. If you look at the county layout across the country, it is very conspicuous where the Northeast sits right now because there's very little green and a lot of orange and some yellows in there. What does that mean? On the website, what we sent out both to staff and to parents in our own mitigation strategy update is a public health advisory from Saratoga County, which has a mitigation toolkit in that. We encourage everyone to take a look at that, stay vigilant against these things. We know a great deal more than we did at this time about the virus, so we're asking everyone to just exercise caution. We have no indication or reason to believe that there are any mandates coming from the county or the state at this point. In conversation with our county health commissioner, he has suggested that this current spike, if you will, we had 100 cases in the district last week. We're over 65 already this week. He is suggesting that this will go down likely just as quickly as it went up. So we continue to ride through this, continue to work off of our mitigation strategy plan. Again, if you haven't seen that on the website, please take a look. It's on our Coping with COVID page, so please review that. The nurses and Mrs. DiAgostino continue the role that they've played all year in managing this, working with families to make sure if your student is positive, if a staff member is positive, they manage that. The education continues for the students. We're continuing our quarantining and exclusion plan that we've had in place throughout the year so far. So again, if everyone, we all continue to work together on this, stay vigilant, be cautious, be thoughtful about this. We will continue to move through the school year and again, look forward to hopefully coming back out of this again. The last piece, just a quick follow-up on what Jason suggested in terms of my transition. I won't reiterate the things that I suggested on the video or in my letter, but as I have reassured Jason and Katie, the board and our team, to Jason's point, we have a significant amount of work left to do, as we do every year at this time. We have laid out and we've continued to refine our 7-point strategic plan. That is something that we have made significant investments in resources, in time in particular, in making this right. Again, the interruption of the last 2 years has slowed us in some of those areas, but that will be our continued focus. We'll continue to work hard on accomplishing the goals that we set out for this year. And again, the team that we have here, the entire team, but our administrative team in particular, we have great people in these positions to really deliver on this strategic plan and continue it moving forward long after my time is done here. So I appreciate the commitment of the board to that plan. Again, supporting all of the work that we have done as a governance team over the years. And this is something that we know will just continue to deliver great opportunities for our students. So thank you for that.
And just to speak at I'm sorry, is the superintendent's report complete?
Yes, sir.
Just to speak at a very high level about the transition. So the announcement was just made last week. I currently, in my role serving on the Wish We BOCES board member, I have been going through for the last 6 months a district superintendent search at that level. And I've been doing everything I can in the last few weeks to understand all the components and pieces of the process for a transition to a new superintendent. So we have relatively new members to our board. Dottie went through a search in the prior 4 years ago. but no one else has. So there is a component of self-education, understanding all the pieces of the process that the board will go through. I can share with the board and the community that at the next meeting on the 18th, we have scheduled now, a presentation from the Wishwe-Bosse's district superintendent on the various pieces and components of the process so that we all can fully understand everything that's involved. And as time goes on, again, there will be absolutely regular communications out to the district, and there certainly will be some mechanism for public comment, input, and participation. Committee reports.
No reports, but just a reminder to the policy committee that we are meeting at 6 p.m. On the 18th, which is the day of our next meeting.
That's okay with policy committee? It's okay with policy committee. 6 p.m. on the 18th. Correspondence. Superintendent, correspondence to the district?
As alluded to from some of the public comments, we have had correspondence with a few folks on a recent book challenge. We have had correspondence on a safety concern on Route 9. This is the time of year where we just can't remind people enough. Please watch out for those red lights on our buses. Watch out for those stop arms. Route 9 in particular is a bit of a speedway in the mornings and the afternoons. Please make sure you're adhering to the laws that are required. If you're not sure of them, Deputy Becker, who is here tonight, will be more than happy to remind you. You'd rather see him coming at you than coming behind you on these things. And the same is true for all roads within our district. Please exercise caution on this. Again, we have an excellent safety record led by our bus drivers and our team. Please help with that and adhere to those rules for stopping for the buses and giving them time and space to operate in. Student concerns from parents, one disciplinary in nature, another school adjustment, a number of letters regarding my transition, and then request for assistance from another school district with getting their reading program up and going using our foundational documents.
Thank you, Superintendent. I just would say that the board was CC'd on the letter regarding the bus safety on Route 9, and certainly echo the superintendent's comments about how we need all of our residents to pay attention to the safety rules related to busing, and of course, we always have it as a concern for us. We're now at the time in our agenda for announcements. Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the district. I have a page. We're keeping track of some of the events and activities. It's a full page for the month of May, and June is just about as full. So I won't read it all tonight, but I'll mention a couple of the important ones. Most of the information, or all the information, is on the website, so people can find it there. But we do need to mention that the school district budget vote and our Board of Education election is on May 17th. The voters that live here in the town of Ballston, and the voters from Charlton, and the voters from Milton will vote here in the library. The voters in the town of Malta vote at the Malta Town Hall, 7 to 9 o'clock on May 17th. The newsletter has been mailed, and so people will be getting that depending on when they deliver it on your specific route this week. And again, all the information is on the website. We have on May 14th, before we get to the vote, we have our Wellness Day 2022. We've mentioned that a couple times before. They did open up the registration for both the kids run and for the 5K. Registrations are coming in slow, so we encourage everybody to get online and register for either a walk or a run, or come join the kids with a fun run and see what a colored run is all about. The spring concerts start next week, so our music department will be having their regular spring concerts. The high school kicks it off on May 9th with their first concert next week. They're all open to the public, all being held here in the high school auditorium, except for at the end of the month on May 26th, the 4 elementary schools are all coming together for one big concert. So it's a change from what's printed on the printed calendar, so folks need to be aware of that. But on May 26th, they're going to try an all-district elementary concert outside in the football stadium like we did last year. Ideally, if it's a beautiful night, we'll be outside. If not, it'll be inside in the auditorium. And also next week on the 13th and 14th, we're hosting the NYSBA Solo and Small Ensemble Festival here at the school. There'll be over 1,000 musicians here from school districts all over the area. And we will basically be using our school. It's Friday night and all day Saturday. And we do need help with that, so if anybody's willing to volunteer for that, our music department would certainly appreciate that. And again, that's next week on the 13th and the 14th. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
I have to say, this coming Saturday, up at the Wood Road Complex, the Touch a Truck event, for all of you who want to see big trucks, that's the place to be. Any other announcements from board members? Okay, thank you. Moving on to new business. May I have a motion to approve resolution number 490, Board of Education Policy Manual File 6120, Recruitment Equal Opportunity Employment.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? And I just want to make sure this is the first read.
That's correct.
So this is the first read of the policy. Had a copy of the policy in the meeting folder. There'll be a 28-day period, so again, any review, comments, questions, we still have 28 days before we'll have the second vote, and which time it would be approved and become district policy. Any questions on that? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 490 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 491, the reorganization meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Again, comments, this will be the first meeting of the next school year, so it'll be July 6th is when it is scheduled. We will be swearing in new board members and also electing officers at that time. Any questions? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 491 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 492, Municipal Cooperation Agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 492 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 493, Agreement, Professional Services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 493 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 494, Scholarship Change.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 494 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 495, Establish Award.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'd just like to thank those behind establishing a new award scholarship for our districts and our students. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 495 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 496, budget transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 496 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 497, placement of students with disabilities.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 497 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 498, placement of preschool students with disabilities.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 498 passes. Resolutions number 499 through 510 are recognized as a consent agenda for the purpose of Board of Education action. May I have a motion to approve resolutions number 499 through 510, the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Consent agenda, resolutions number 499 through 510 passes. I'd like to note that we would like to congratulate Ms. Sisk, who is in attendance here, for her appointment to a new position with us here in the district. Congratulations.
For those of you who don't know, Dana Sisk currently serves as one of our high school assistant principals. Anytime we can promote one of our individuals from within, based on an open search process, is always, in my opinion, advantageous to the district. Dana, it was really a privilege to be able to recommend you tonight, so congratulations.
I'd also just like to comment that there's 3.5 pages of appointments for interscholastic points, sports, instructional summer work, extracurricular activities, and of course we are just so grateful to our staff members that besides the teaching that they do all day, then also sign up to support our students in all of the other extracurricular activities that we can offer. So thank you all to them. Any other new business?
We have a
Any other new business?
Don't we have a welcome resolution?
Yes, I'm sorry, we do have a walk.
Oh, we have a walk-on. I don't have the walk-on. Why don't I have the walk-on?
It's in the back. It's the last one.
It's on the back of our.
Because I have an older copy.
Here.
I got it. Thank you, Tim. May I have a motion to walk on resolution number 511, appointment support services?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to walk on the resolution? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 511 will be walked on. I have a motion to approve resolution number 511, appointment support services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And the walk-on resolution is for a substitute bus driver. We're thrilled. Any other new business? Not from the district. Any other new business from board members? Okay, we are at the time in our agenda, the second time for public comment. Do we have anyone signed up? Okay. Do we have anyone representing our associations?
Does not appear so, no.
All right. Then the board will adjourn. We do have,
I just want to make 2 PTA announcements.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. The high school PTA volunteers will be organizing tomorrow for after prom. They'll be organizing donations and creating the front display case tomorrow night, 7 p.m. in the front lobby. All are encouraged and welcome to come help. In addition to that, the Gordon Creek PTA needs a few more volunteers for their spring fling event this Friday. So you can go to their Facebook page and sign up. They have a website set up to sign up to volunteer.
Super. That's Friday night spring fling event at Gordon Creek? Okay.
5 to 7.
5 to 7. Are you going to be there?
I'm selling raffle tickets to throw a pie in the principal's face.
Fantastic.
That's what I volunteered for. It's gonna be a hot,
You'll be very busy.
yes,
Do you sell
I'll stay
groups,
busy.
groups of tickets? Just to be clear.
only to the Whittemore kids. I wish.
I shaved my head in honor of it, Dottie.
And the PTSA is probably going full out for its after prom planning and preparation. Many thanks to all the local businesses and individuals that donate items for that. So during the course of the after prom event, there are raffles. The students can get TVs, mini fridges, all the sorts of things that they would need as they go on to their post-secondary lives, and it's really a great event. So anything that anyone can do to support that is absolutely appreciated. Any other announcements? Okay. It's time for adjournment. The board does have reason to go into executive session for purposes of the tenure review of certain individuals and to discuss the superintendent transition. I'd like to thank all those in attendance, thank all of you watching online, and we are adjourned to executive session. We will not be returning to open session. May I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.